We have been trying to emphasize that the Democratic Party has not been much of an opposition party in this country in recent times. The party has allowed things like supported appropriations for the war in Iraq. You've seen senators vote for the Patriot Act, vote for the recent FISA bill that gave telecom companies immunities for spying against American citizens. There are so many issues that we think are relevant to this campaign that we're eager to discuss them. We'd like an opportunity to debate our opponents, and we are committed to a 50-state strategy to try to discuss all of these issues in not just the states that are in quote-unquote contention. Regarding ballot access in the state of Texas, let me just say there have been a number of news media that have reported on our comments wherein we have indicated that it's difficult to get on the ballot in Texas. Texas is one of, I think, only 2 states that has a very obstructionist policy that does not allow somebody to sign a petition to put an independent candidate on the ballot if they voted in the primary. That in effect takes 4 million potential signers out of the equation if you're going to start a signature gathering effort. And the time periods to qualify for the ballot are quite early in the presidential season. I've noticed that in a couple of the media reports that examples of candidates that have been able to gather signatures are often brought up. Kinky Friedman, for instance. Let me just say, Friedman did not face this 4 million voter primary issue, and he had less of a number of votes that, or rather signatures that he had to collect in order to qualify for the ballot. It was roughly, it was under 50,000 that he had to collect valid signatures. To get on the ballot as independents in a presidential contest, you have to get nearly 75,000. Mr. Nader is well known to the American public. He's worked on a host of pieces of legislation that are part of the fabric of American society. In fact, so much so that we often take it for granted. He is, of course, best known for the work he did in getting seatbelts into cars, but he was instrumental in passing laws related to clean air, clean water, and of course the press will appreciate the Freedom of Information Act, and a host of other pieces of legislation that impacted the EPA, OSHA, all kinds of things. I often say that his legislative record is far superior to that of the U.S. senators who've actually served in the U.S. Senate and are now running for President of the United States. Ralph?
Thank you, Matt Gonzalez, and thank you for coming here. I'd like to emphasize this morning the crisis in civil justice here in Texas. Corporations and their lobbyists in the state legislature have shut down the courtroom doors in a variety of ways to the ability of wrongfully injured and wrongfully sickened Texans from going to court, having their full day in court before judge and jury, and holding accountable the corporations and other perpetrators of their harm. There are few states in the United States where wrongdoers, reckless companies, negligent healthcare sellers can get away with more after they have injured or killed their victims. Here in Texas, by 100 cuts, the wrongdoers lobby and the insurance industry have restricted the rights of wrongfully injured people from obtaining their justice in the court of law in Texas. They do this by restricting dramatically class action rights, the rights of a whole host of injured people banding together and getting competent legal counsel to challenge the wrongdoers. They've done it by almost destroying any deterrent impact from punitive damages. They've done it by trapping plaintiffs who are suing corporations, and if a corporation offers a piddling settlement and it's turned down by the injured plaintiff. And later in a trial, for a variety of reasons, the plaintiff doesn't recover more than the offer. The plaintiff will have to pay the oil company or the mineral company's attorney fees. There's no worse way to discourage the use of our courts. Unfortunately, the whole panorama of restrictions on the rights of innocent people who have been injured, sickened, or killed because of the negligence and recklessness of hospitals, of physicians, of polluters, of product manufacturers is so complex that it doesn't lend itself to anything but a general denunciation rather than a soundbite. But it's very serious. Texas has been reduced by giant corporations to the status of a legal colony, where the courts are open for corporations to litigate, but closed for ordinary Texans, whose innocence and injury do not combine to achieve accountability in the court of law here. Obviously, I hold responsible the greedy and avaricious perpetrators of harm who are in it to preserve their profits and not allow the courts to provide justice on behalf of their victims. It isn't that they have been winning so much in court, although they've been electing a good deal of the Supreme Court justices with all their money. It's that they have obtained the services of the legislature here in Austin to tie the hands of judges and jurors in so many ways that they are unable to provide justice to the injured and accountability for the perpetrators. But there's someone else that I hold responsible. And that is the trial lawyers in Texas. With a few outstanding exceptions, the trial lawyers representing plaintiffs in Texas, who over the years have built a wonderful structure of common law accountability, protecting injured and sick people from the perpetrators of their harms and holding these perpetrators accountable, have in recent years declined to provide adequate resources in building citizen groups throughout Texas to make sure that the legislature does not take away their rights to their full day in court at the point of greatest vulnerability when they are injured by negligence or crimes of the perpetrators. I call on the trial lawyers representing plaintiffs in Texas to start establishing throughout Texas public justice organizations that will make very clear to the lawmakers that the system of destroyed justice in Texas has to be replaced with a system of justice that has equal access to all Texans. It's time to bring back justice to Texas. That means rolling back the many pieces of legislation that have destroyed the hopes and aspirations of extremely injured and sick people to get adequate compensation for their expenses and to hold their perpetrators accountable. Without accountability in the courts of law for those companies and other perpetrators of harm upon Texas citizens, there is no safety and there is no health here in Texas. Year after year, the destruction of legal accountability and responsibility for the perpetrators of harm here in Texas will increasingly endanger more and more Texans because there will be no deterrence left to keep these corporations saying to themselves, we better become safer, we better become more concerned about people's health and safety because it's going to cost us a lot of money in court.